compress resources out of the public records set all in one great big merged, JSON object. Very, very cool. Nobody's really ever done this before. So we can definitely see some clear use cases for it, but I can't wait for you guys to blow our minds about what you take and do with it. As you know, public records can be used for a whole lot of things. Backfilling address search, being used for lead gen like crazy. I was talking to a friend of mine who he's in the business of blowing insulation into attics, aftermarket insulation install. And we were chatting about this, and he realized he could search for properties in a certain county, built within a certain range of years, with a certain class of attic. And to postcard those folks kind of blew his mind. So that's all totally the kind of thing that the public records data is going to make available. And I really like this diagram because it talks about the great big vision of Trestle. So most of you probably think of Trestle as a way to get MLS data, and it certainly is. But in the great big vision of Trestle, the great big future we see for Trestle, it is a centralized source for all manner of real estate related data, including data that CoreLogic has, third parties data sets, who knows what. As you can see there, we have public record now. AVM is coming next. We expect to have that sometime around early next year, probably. And then who knows what? We could do our flood data. We could do neighborhood, demographics, sales score, a whole bunch of things that CoreLogic has that we could expose in Trestle for whatever use case you all can imagine. And Trestle then becomes not just a conduit to an MLS, but really a one-stop place for all the data that could possibly power your business. All right, so let's head back to the live poll, and I have a question specifically about that for you, which is, which of these data assets that come from CoreLogic would you be interested in? Justin, why don't you drop your share for a second? I'll try sharing the result here. We got that? All right, cool. So people are responding 1 to 5 in terms of their interest in these things. So yeah, it seems like I'm working. You're seeing this go in real time, Justin?
Yes, I am.
All right, cool. Well, maybe I'll take over the deck then too. All right, very interesting. As you can see, public record is kind of winning, but neighborhood and demographic is right up there.
Hey, Dan, there's a couple questions in the Q&A for you.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was going to mention this. We have Justin and Al mainly are going to be the people in responding to chat, responding to Q&A. We answered about clip being different from RESO UPI. We are recording this. I don't know about distributing it, Robert, but I get the question. Do you need to belong to the MLS to obtain related data? You do not need to. We're offering CoreLogic data assets to people who are not connected with the MLS. It's our own data. It's not licensed through the MLS, so it can be done separately. All right, very cool. 40 responses on that. We can call that good. Good, great feedback. Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna try sharing. If this doesn't go well, Justin, we'll kick back over to you. All right, some other enhancements that have happened in Trestle that are sort of I mean, we still like them, but they're not as splashy as those big two. We now have the ability for the MLS to stand up data service with a vendor without using Trestle's built-in contracting and billing. And the main use case we can see for this, it was a couple use cases. One is for third-party syndication. Their agreement with Zillow isn't going to happen on Trestle because it's bigger and more unwieldy, and it's a one-off, and we're not going to do that inside Trestle. So they could do that offline and set up billing for that offline, and then set up just stand up the data inside Trestle. The other use case we see for that is when there are the data licensing is built into the sales contract for one of your products. I know W&R does this with Cloud CMA. Their sales contract includes the data licensing agreement, and so having another one in Trestle is clunky. So the MLS can now stand up the data connection without having to go through all those steps. So it'll come to you, and I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. We have enhanced the contract status details on your dashboards. I hope that's been helpful for you. It's been out for a couple of months. You can now see the status of contracts and kind of where they're hung up and who they're waiting on. And I hope that has simplified your management of those things. We also added a disabled contract status. So it used to be if you wanted a contract deleted, we could do that, but it would go away and not be visible anymore. We've had some requests from MLSs to have a status that means a contract's turned off, but it's still visible. And they want that for compliance purposes and for historical visibility. On the API side, recent changes. This was earlier in the year, and I'd be shocked if anyone here was unaware of how our quotas work. I don't know, maybe you are. Justin and Al are going to dig into that pretty deep in the next section. But we now have dynamic tiered quotas that scale with your usage, and really alleviated a lot of the quota issues we were having toward the end of last year. We've added a feature called Pretty Enums. So the Web API spec, which is based in OData, calls for enumeration values to not have spaces in them. But that's no good because you want to put those values on the screen and use them in drop-down controls and things like that. So you can now pass a Pretty Enums command on your query, and you'll get back a prettified version of it. We're looking in the metadata to turn it into what it ought to look like. And then another thing we've added is cross-site queries. And what that literally means is we've enabled Trestle to accept queries from the JavaScript on your user's desktop, right? So you will use your credentials on your server, get a token, put that in JavaScript, and then your web application front end can talk to Trestle directly. It doesn't even have to hit your back end. I don't know of anyone actually using that yet, but I'm real interested if somebody is or somebody is about to. I think that it's very lightweight. I know that some of you are blanching at the thought of giving up control of being in the middle of that. But I'm really interested to know if people are using that. It was an easy thing to add for us, and seemed like something that people might want. All right, there are two, I mentioned this one earlier, invitation-based connection modes that you should just be prepared to start seeing on your dashboard. Very unlikely these will come to you without you knowing about it, but I want you to know what it looks like. So if I am a vendor, I'm a technology provider in Trestle, and an MLS, Transgalactic MLS, has initiated a contractless connection. And I always do air quotes around the word contractless connection that I mentioned back on the last slide, because there always ought to be a contract. But it's not happening in Trestle. The contracting and billing is happening offline somewhere. This is what that's going to look like. So it's going to come to you in a status of pending. The contract type will say outside Trestle, and you can accept or decline. And if you accept, that contract, the connection is live just like that. You just turn it on, you're good to go. If you decline, it just goes away. And I think it emails the MLS that you declined. The second kind is from upstream. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if you were unaware of what upstream is. Sorry, we have a Slack channel where we're all kind of back channeling about what we ought to be saying, and I just got distracted by it. Something good Al said that I will say next. So upstream is a product that is being built by a consortium of brokers. That's about them being able to manage and modify and enhance and then redistribute their own brokerage data. And the back end for it, the vendor-facing side of it, is the Trestle vendor interface. So in your dashboard, if a broker is inviting you to have an upstream connection to take their data, it'll look like this. And there'll be a section of the dashboard, actually at the top of the dashboard, says upstream. This is a screenshot of it, that shows the connection to the brokerage being invited to you, and you click accept to turn it on. What you'll get in the API is a feed of just their data. In the media table, you may find agent and office related media, including possibly documents. That is a preview of coming attractions, but I'm not going to say a lot about that right now. So the point is, you should be prepared for it to look like this. I know that in the past it's been the signing all gets done and the data's live without you. This workflow is they do what they did on their side and you come and say, I accept. Al wants me to mention, I'm just going to back up here to cross-site queries. Literally what Al wants me to say is, use this responsibly. Because he and I had a spirited conversation about this. There is some concern about your auth token going down for use in the client, in a public client. So do your best to make that non-scrapable. Have that not be in the body of the web document, etc. I will also add that our last release upgraded the API side to .NET 2.1, I believe, whatever the latest .NET Core is, which got us about a 30% performance boost on the API. So I hope you have felt that. If not, you should soon. All right, last thing, and Justin's going to get in more depth on this in a minute, but we have a new documentation website, trestle-documentation.corelogic.com. We are really, really happy with it, and it is, in some way the apology tour of what we had up before it. Big improvement in our documentation, and very much will be a work in progress for life. So we want your feedback. We want anything you encounter that you think, gosh, I wish that was better documented. Let us know. We want to know that. We want to document it. It's got code samples in lots of languages. We are open to your submission of other code samples in other languages or other ways to approach things. And it's got a really great metadata explorer that shows you field by field what's in the payload. Coming up in Trestle, so this is featured stuff that's coming. We are about to launch into, it's going to be sort of the focus of Q4, an overhaul of our offering for broker users. And I'll say a little more detail about that in a minute, but our broker accounts in Trestle currently can only connect to one MLS. And that there are markets where that's fine, but there are also markets where MLSs overlap. And if you can't be a broker and not be in multiple MLSs, and our service it was a significant deficiency. So that's one big upgrade. We're also making a pricing change that I'll talk about in a sec. And then one thing that is coming up that I think you'll probably love is we are going to be providing the data mapping documentation per MLS in the dashboard. So we're making those documents available on a request basis right now to help people migrate from native to data dictionary. Happy to give you that because we know you need it in a lot of cases. We'd like you to just have it to download and look at. You should bear in mind that it changes over time, so you shouldn't archive them somewhere. Come get them fresh. But that'll be, I think, very useful for folks. On the API side, we are adding the AVM product right alongside our public records. We're doing a big upgrade to our photo and media handling. We're actually building a media management service that's going to span CoreLogic and be, it's going to power pretty much all of the products and real estate solutions over time. So that's going to improve a lot of things. It'll give us access to media about other resources, members and offices. It'll give us access to listing documents. So that is coming, probably be middle of next year when that happens. I know many of you have been very eager for that. We're looking to denormalize standard status and maybe some other fields into child resources. Right now, filtering child resources by the status of the listing is very cumbersome, and in some cases impossible. So we'll be fixing that. We have some upgrades we want to make to the OData text functions, including case sensitivity controls. We'll be adding some data resources, and I am looking at premium quota levels, particularly to support folks who are doing real-time usage on really popular websites. It's possible to totally crush your quota and be out of business until the hour rolls over, and that's bad. So we'll give people the ability to, essentially help us fund the infrastructure that they would like to consume from us. All right, one more live poll. Here is my last question for this group. I mentioned new resources coming from Trestle, and I'm interested in what your priorities are around that. I hear from MLSs that certain data resources are suddenly like super important, but I rarely hear that from you guys. And so I'd love to get your feedback on what resources would be of value to you and what order we ought to tackle them in. History transactional is winning. As I'm sure you know, that's a bit of a problematic one to bite off, but certainly the demand is large for that. Larger than I expected, frankly. This is really enlightening. It's good. All right, well, that's fairly definitive, isn't it? Good to know. I'm interested, if some of you who have said history transactional, you know what, reach out to me on your support Slack and I'd be interested in knowing what if you really intend to use that to replay changes and as a replacement for replication, or if there's some feature you want to build based on the changes that are seen. I'm just interested in your use case. So if you wouldn't mind hitting me on your support Slack and just at me there and just kind of give me a rundown of what you have in mind. That being such a definitive response, I just need to dig into that better. Cool. Thank you. That was a really useful question to ask. Wow. All right. One last thing I want to let you guys know about, and it may affect some of you, and it certainly won't affect some of you, but you should know about it because it is a pretty substantial change. As you may or may not know, the NAR brought out a new policy at mid-year, the participant data access policy, which requires the MLS to give brokers a feed of their own listing data, and says the MLS may charge a reasonable delivery fee for this, and that they may not restrict the purpose of it, and that it's effective the first of the year. Now, we are not an MLS. We are not beholden to that policy. But what that policy did was it put in the air a whole lot of interest and demand and communication and requests about brokers accessing their own data, both from brokers and from MLSs looking to see if Trestle could be their compliance solution for this. Most brokers were doing something a lot like this already. Most MLSs were. But the wave of communication we got immediately after this made it real clear that the landscape changed and we needed to reconsider. So the way our offering on the broker side has been is that a broker can connect to one MLS, and their first feed of any type to that MLS, we don't charge a flat platform fee for. They pay whatever they pay to the MLS for licensing, but we don't charge $75 like we do to vendors because they're brokers and they're special. And feeds after that, additional feeds, are $75 a month. Our change that we're making, effective January 1st, in sync with the NAR policy, is we're going to be overhauling their interface so that they can connect to multiple MLSs. From each MLS, they can get what we're calling a broker data feed, which is just their own data, compliant as defined in the NAR policy. And they'll pay for that, whatever the MLS charges, which in a lot of cases is nothing, plus a $25 a month trestle fee. And then, just like in the other model, the older, the current system, other feeds are $75 a month. So, this is necessitated by the wave of demand that we're seeing. It's just getting really clear that first feed free thing just won't scale. And so we have to make this change. We have pre-gamed this with a number of the MLSs who are already some way down the road into adoption of the broker interface. It's a thing that they have to turn on their side in Trestle. We'll be making the official announcement about this by email coming out from Amy Gorse on Monday. We want to let you guys know, I know it may impact some of you, so you should just kind of have some awareness of that going on.
Hey, Dan, your screen share's lagged again. Do you want me to take back over?
What are you looking at?
Dan Ray has started screen sharing.
Have I? All right. Why don't you take back over?
All right.
Although actually, I'm essentially done. Go forward one more. Yeah. So that lays out the change we're making to the broker interface and broker offering. It's pretty straightforward. Feel free to hit me with questions. All right, and that wraps up the business side, the product side of TrestleFest 2020. And I'm going to hand it over now to Al and Justin to talk about some, what you may really be here for, the nerdy stuff. So here they are.
Cool. So like I said, I'm Al McElman, Senior Leader Software Engineering. I've met a lot of you at RESO events, definitely a lot of you in Slack. It's funny really to look through the list of attendees and see a lot of really familiar names. I see one person whose spouse that I've met at RESO, but I've never met her. So, it's really nice to kind of see this whole community come together. And that's really the kind of support method we try to take with Trestle. We have very intimate Slack support, whereas some of you probably even have code running in production that Justin wrote, or at least helped you tweak a little bit. And, and that's certainly no knock against anyone. It's just a matter that's how we try to operate within Trestle. It's very personal. Justin and our other support staff get to know your actual code base, your use case, and as best as he can, wants to work with you and your developers to make it work. This has turned to a very positive experience, both for us, getting a lot of good consumer feedback on what we need to build next, as well as solving a lot of your problems very quickly. We really appreciate all the feedback that you're giving us in Slack, both positive and negative. Some of these interactions can be more heated than others because it's always a tough problem to solve when there's something going wrong. You needed to get it fixed. But I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for the collaboration